India, every fourth death which is happening is due to a cardiovascular condition. So, or a heart condition, it could be stroke, heart attack, cardiac. Now, 50% of the heart attacks have started to happen before age 60. 80% of those premature heart attacks that's been before 60 are preventable if you do right screening and right lifestyle intervention.
You don't come from a professional medicine background. When you used to go to the business leaders and tell them what you do, how you can help, what used to be response?
Because when suddenly people hear about heart, the first thought comes as a doctor or an emergency. My job is that you do not reach that stage. That is my competency. That is my research. If you've reached that stage, still my role will be there, but I will become more like a partner in that journey along with a doctor or
Clearly, the difference between the life expectancy, which is how long we live,
yeah.
compared to health expectancy, how well we live. Someone like me, how do I make a decision which source is reliable when it comes to health?
Living in an age of over information, and now on top of it obviously you have AI, which on a click of a things you can get a lot of information, a lot of time in researching what is happening, to make sure that we are presenting a quality and evidence based things.
Any suggestion which you wish someone would have given to you?
And if you're working, right now you're doing a job, start to shift your mindset more from an employee to a business owner kind of a mindset. I'm talking in the mindset because that's where your training will start in a way, mental training to be able to achieve that. So that find a right group of mentors because a mentor may be a leadership coach, having that mentor where you who can see things in a more detached manner.
From banking to international trade and investment to health and wellness. That's a journey our guest today has taken through his career of more than 20 years. Ankur, welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you, Chetan. Great to be back with you, and I think it's been a great journey. So I'm excited for today's conversation.
Ankur, so today on a dinner table, when someone asks you what do you do, how do you respond?
So I say, I'm on a mission to prevent heart attacks in India, which is what my current pursuit is, and that because I feel that's a very big problem and it can be solved.
So, Ankur, every guest on this podcast, what we call impossible transition, has made transition which seems difficult, if not impossible, at some point. And that is your journey also. And this is your second venture in healthcare also. So,
Yes.
what was the driver between each of these transition and what challenges you faced during each transition?
Career is divided in three phases. The first phase was in the banking and the financial services space. Second was in the international business development, and third phase is the entrepreneurship phase. And within each phase, also there were multiple transitions. Where in my initial 5 6 years, I spent focusing primarily on the service and the operations side of the financial services. Then I transitioned into more business development and the sales role. So that was a big change for me. And where initially you are focusing on getting more efficiencies, volume. That is a more pursuit on the operations side. But when it comes to sales, it's a very different ball game because then it becomes more relationship driven. So that was the first, I would say, the big transition. And I must say, it was a very challenging transition in the first 6 months because I was trying to get my feet in that, how to pursue the sales and the business development part. And then, started to settle on the bit that uh, I learned that sales is a lot on the relationship management, how you build, and at the same time being remain authentic, because I had this impression or these conditioning which many of people believe that sales you have to do to trick someone, you have to say things which are not true. But I followed my own method and trusted my own way. And that has been holding me till date because as entrepreneur also you are doing sales. Then the second big transition, I would say, because what started to happen, I spent good 10 years in the banking and the financial services space. working with the international banks like HSBC and Standard Chartered, and then transitioning into a more Indian bank like Yes Bank, which was just starting at that point in time. I felt that I was not growing more in terms of my own career goals. I was growing, I was being successful, I was getting promotion, salary raises, whatever typically a person aspires for in a career. But somewhere inside me, I said I'm just doing the same work, maybe having a bigger clients, higher pay, and just growing. But my learning was not growing. I was not diversifying in terms of what I wanted to do. And I found that, having spent in 8, 10 years in a banking sector and within I would say, a periphery of a function, which was primarily corporate banking, there was limited opportunities to diversify. And then, I had a little curiosity that what next, and somehow this opportunity came my way, which was into international business development. And but when it came to international business, I had never done that. International, dealing with international clients, the business culture, how, so that excited me a lot. And I would say that opportunity was unique from two dimensions. One was international business, and also you get an opportunity to work in the international government space. So that was something new challenge for me. And I had to build things from scratch, because initial posting I was given was to build the Australian presence in the Haryana and the Punjab region. At that time there was a lot of I would say strain in the relations, primarily because of racial attacks which was happening in to Indians in back in Australia. And I had to, there were days when I was interacting with this respective state governments, or and there were few days that I was actually going inside Punjab and Haryana, visiting dairy farms, agricultural universities, as was and education. So that was challenging itself, dealing with bureaucracy, dealing. This is the first time I started dealing with educational institutions, or dealing with agricultural farmers or businesses. So they are very different from a typical corporate business. So that's what I would say that exposed me really well to how to deal in different situations, because you come from a more corporate kind of a background where you were dealing with either PSUs, or you were, I was dealing with the listed private sector companies. So it's a very, there things are more organized and structured and predictable. Here it was not the case. So these were few things which I learned in these two transitions. And then obviously there was a third transition, which was the entrepreneurship.
Ankur, great journey. So, in your transition to entrepreneurship, also your first venture, being as a co-founder of WellCure, the
Yeah.
focus was more on the natural healing, as I understand, and then you made transition to your current venture, the Pivot Health, which is more focused on business leaders and that too
Yes.
on the heart health.
Yes.
So, what has been journey of moving from a more broader healthcare to very specific audience and that too for a very specific area of heart health? What were the drivers and what again, what challenges which you faced which you did not expect it?
Yeah. So, I was transitioning after being working, in a corporate environment for 20 years. So, and it's been not still, 20 years versus last 7 years. It's still proportionately, it's only one third of time I've spent there. But I must say, every day is a learning day for me. You have to solve every problem. If there is a team member who is leaving, or team member is not performing, there is issue with client, legal, finance, everything you are responsible. You can't say, I have this domain, and then, and I'll focus on this. I'm responsible for everything. So this is a big, I would say, shift. It took me real good time to understand. that you have to really get your hands dirty and be ready for an unpredictability, what will happen, unpredictability in terms of financial unpredictability as well. So there on last day of the month, there was a credit, your salary coming, but here you have to create your own credit. You may have the ups and downs, the swings, which was there. And then when I was, doing this transition from my first venture to second venture, as asked me, where it was more mass market, I would say, or more D2C venture, but as a generic wellness level. And that was the time when I started venture around COVID times, which is where suddenly there were a lot of awareness, suddenly a lot of online, and that's where my first startup, Wellcure, was, and in the middle of that phase. So there we used to have a large number of clients, and we were doing group programs, or doing self-paced learning programs as well. But somewhere I used to get a lot of satisfaction because I used to do coach people there, and I used to sense a lot of satisfaction in what I was doing. That because you could see the impact on their health, speaking to clients, being a partner in their health journey. So that I used to always like that. And so when I transitioned out of from Wellcure, I thought that I would be focusing on personalized health coaching. That is where my forte, that is my interest. And the second aspect, then I didn't want to solve the problem of weight loss, which every second, I would say, almost not even second, everyone is solving one problem of weight loss, whether it's a nutritionist or your gym trainer, or even a yoga teacher, who's doing anything in the healthcare space. All the conversation startups revolved majorly around weight loss. And obviously now we are living in a time we have drugs and other things, so that remains the most common problem. And that didn't excite me, and also I felt that how would I compete with so many people vying for the same customer, or say solving the same problem. Then I spoke to different healthcare professionals. And in recent years, as you would have also heard and seen, that a lot of people are young people in their 40s, even late 30s, especially business leaders, and we hear that they are suddenly passing through to a heart attack or a cardiac arrest. And I felt that this is a problem I should pick up. And then when I researched, what I found was that, to my surprise, I would say, I didn't realize that such a big problem, that in India, every fourth death which is happening is due to a cardiovascular condition. So, or a heart condition, it could be stroke, heart attack, cardiac arrest. And then I said, okay, this is the biggest problem. And second is another stats which was published few years back, that now 50% of the heart attacks have started to happen before age 60, which medically, or it's called the premature heart attacks. So I said that it's even more concerning. We, as a country, are in a phase where this generation between 30 and 60 is the pillar. It's going to make the most economical contribution to our growth. And how come we are not taking care, or people are not taking care of themselves? I would put it that ways. And that's why I said that I will work on solving this as a problem. And what I found was that even when I spoke to doctors, they said 80% of those premature heart attacks that's been before 60 are preventable if you do right screening and right lifestyle intervention. So that's why I said, okay, this big enough problem, there is enough data. And that's what then led me to this pursuit to design a program specifically targeted to solve this problem.
Ankur, that's a amazing journey from a leader to an entrepreneur, right? And I know you have to create all the systems which you don't even can visualize while you're in a corporate
Yeah.
job. And you have chosen to create, as you said, a new category. And you don't come from a professional medicine background, right? So when you used to go to the business leaders and tell them what you do, how you can help, what used to be response, and how has that response changed in last few years?
So I would say, still that remains one of the challenge for when I go and say, because when suddenly people hear about heart, the first thought come as a doctor or an emergency, those things come. But what I tell them that, you also said it's not a medical background. And I used to, I have a, problem with when people say about healthcare system. The current system which exists in any country and in our country or globally, it's more what we use word for a healthcare system. It's a disease management or a sick care system. If you are sick or if you have a disease, then that system takes care of you. In that, it includes your medicine, it includes your doctor, it includes your physiotherapist or hospital infrastructure. It's very much required for any emergency. But you don't go to a doctor that with a question that how can I be healthy? How can I prevent? When it comes to a healthcare system, that's where all the aspects of what you eat, how you move, how you exercise, how you take care of your mental well-being, all the that comes part of a healthcare system. And also the health infrastructure, more in terms of do we have open clean spaces, clean air, water, that all is part of a healthcare system. And I think that is where I think the narrative needs to shift. And along with me, there are other people who are trying to make this shift. So when I have a conversation with them, this is the first differentiation I tell them that, okay, my job is that you do not reach that stage. That is my competency, that is my research. If you've reached that stage, still my role will be there, but I will become more like a partner in that journey along with a doctor or infrastructure, or whatever you are experiencing. So people don't realize it's not just knowledge, how to coach people. They don't have time. If you go to a doctor, on an average, a good doctor, you may be waiting just 1 hour, even at the scheduled appointment time, to get that 5 minutes with them. Right? So when we coach people, we give them half an hour for each session. There are a lot of myths and a lot of over information exist in these days with Google, AI, people just doing overload with information. And the second aspect is the personalization aspect. That's why I picked up personal health coaching, because every individual is different, Chetan. Even if it's the same age, like, someone like you who's based out of Bangalore, I am based out of Delhi NCR, just our physical environment is different. And if that's the case, your physiology, your body, your physical problems completely changes. That's where I feel that personalization aspect is there, where we focus on and try and educate our clients, our companies where I go, and that this is a differentiation. These are the roles which are differentiated. And I think, that's where then they've started to realize that this is different. This is important, and it's not, it's just medical system versus the other system. It's everyone has their role clearly defined.
Ankur, you mentioned about the role of coaching, especially for the behavior where we are more reactive about the health rather than proactive. So, in these interactions with your clients, what are some of the patterns you commonly observe which could make a difference between it being a proactive approach versus reactive approach?
And what pattern I see is that in today's age, or especially today's age of AI and everything, people think that coach is just delivering advice. It's just delivering. I can do that. I'll just tap in Chat GPT, put my problem. what I my preference is, and it'll give me a diet plan and exercise plan and everything. But that's where I feel, that the shift or needs to be corrected. That coach has far greater role. The coaching or the health coaching, if I may, from my domain, it's 30% technical. That what exercise or what diet or what nutrient you need to take and other things. But 70%, 60% is the human behavior. Making that shift in is the most important thing. uh, any technology, AI, or any device will not be able to do this, because ultimately we are bound by our own behavior, whether it is in the business world, whether it is in any pursuit in life. So that's what I feel, that someone, you having an accountability person and questioning you, and in a right manner. And we are missing, I think, in today's technical age, we are missing this non-judgmental uh, conversation, where the other person actually really cares for you, whichever coach he is or she is. So that is where I feel that correction is required.
And Ankur, what are some patterns you see with your clients when it comes to dealing with various aspects of health? Could
Yes. So there are, one aspect is definitely the testing, because that's what we start with, what we call as deep health analysis, where we analyze the blood test and the biomarkers, or what are there, uh, correlate it with what they're experiencing, their symptoms, and so these are two aspects. And I find that, many people, they go for a very generic testing. They will buy the cheapest package, or they go for their corporate, whatever their corporate, their offices get their testing done. Obviously, for rightful reason, they are getting it for a mass market, so it'll be cheaper. They'll just have few important tests. But when it comes to a deep dive, especially for a heart health, that gives only a very incomplete picture. So that's what we advise people test, like getting testing for what we call as say inflammation, and a marker like HSCRP, or testing for fasting insulin, which can predict metabolic disorders or diabetes 4, 5, 6 years ahead. And other tests like APOB, which is about a better marker than your typical cholesterol marker. So these are, few tests, and it doesn't cost you like any big money, but it's just that simple, awareness can give you more granular information. Like, we in business, data is important to have the right decision making and direction. Same way, when it comes to health, data has a very important role, and we are lucky that, all these things are accessible to us. And second is, what I feel is that uh, people want something magical to happen, and they don't. I feel that any diet, when it comes to diet or even exercise, we have very less time in and so much, already leaders are so much loaded with stuff. So uh, sustainability, that's a hallmark of a great or the best, coach, which I say, that if you are able to give them a solution, whether it's diet or exercise or anything, if you can make them sustainable, that is what makes the difference. Because anything you do for a long time, that compounds, and that gives you the result. The first, we do not believe that our coaching or our plans has to fit in, the client has to fit into that. Our system, our coaching should fit in the client's life, and the constraints which they face.
So, Ankur, I'll pick up the thread about the testing, what you mentioned about the biomarkers. And frankly speaking, I heard about the marker which you were telling for the first time now. And see, in today's world, there are so many sources of information all across. And, uh, someone would typically say that, okay, these are the set of health checks I know doctors have recommended, or maybe they are in the health check, but I'll go for that. And for someone like me, how do I make a decision which source is reliable when it comes to health? Should I be going for these test markers or not?
So, we are again, as I had earlier said, that we are living in an age of over information. And now on top of it, obviously you have AI, which on a click of a things, you can get a lot of information. Earlier, you used to still search on Google, see videos, articles, and then form an opinion. Now that's not even required. People just blindly trust, what AI throws up to them. And that's a very risky pattern which is there. And on top of it, you have a lot of what we call as health influencers coming up with their own theories, mixing science and anecdotal evidence. So that makes it even very very a lot of noise is there. And I think when it comes to we come, I believe that approach has to be evidence based, science backed, and science is always evolving. It's always questioning, it is research backed. So I think that's where I feel it is important that an anecdotal evidence, you took x herb or x thing and something happened to you, improve your health and thing, it has no meaning. What does a randomized control trial say? What is the extent of research? What is the longevity of research? Uh, are you able to explain what you are consuming or what you are doing and how it is impacting? Let's take people's claim that you have this herb and you'll be cured of your diabetes. A lot of such claims come, but can you explain what is the physiological mechanism it is resulting? So, I always say that the three filters one should use. One, who is communicating there? Does he have any qualification, experience in that sector? It's a general person who is mentioning. So that is one filter. Let's assume that filter is crossed. The second filter should be, is the statement little nuanced? Is context dependent, research backed, or more the extreme the claim? That means you should have a shadow of doubt. The more confident the person is that this is 100% it'll happen, or you should go for this. This is magical. Some of these words, because science will never be 100%. It will always have a nuances and condition. That's a second, I would say, filter you should use. What are the kind of languages? What are the kind of, it's more claiming, kind of a thing. And third, does that person explains the depth, whether it is the body mechanism, whether it is the context, or wants you that be do you contact your doctor or a healthcare professional for whatever advice which you're giving. So these are three filters which I use like even the test which I spoken to you about. These we've been talking about these tests because the research was very clear. In even in the some of the good doctor circles and internationally, these have started to become part of the diagnostics. And you'll be surprised that just in mid-March, almost a month back, American Heart Association released a new guidelines for heart testing, and all these tests are now, not all of these, but at least HSCRP, APOB have now been recognized formally by our international body that should be there. Other two tests are more indirect markers, so that's why it is not there. But to any sensible scientist, doctor, you go, they will not question it. What we are trying to say. So that is what was a validation of what was research back. And I spent a lot of time in researching what is happening to make sure that it's we are presenting a quality and evidence based things which people should not get confused with, hopefully.
Sure. And Ankur, if someone wants to reach out to you, maybe you can give a link. We can put it in the description section of the
Sure,
podcast,
sure, sure.
Ankur.
So, as you can see on the background, that's our website, www.thepivothealth.com. I'm active on Instagram and LinkedIn. So they can reach out to me through messaging through those platforms, or email us at ankur@thepivothealth.com. So these are the ways, different ways to reach out to us, and we are very proactive, making sure that no response, gets missed from our team.
So, Ankur, another depth which the Pivot Health is doing is focus on the heart rehab, right? So, tell us more about it. What is the meaning of heart rehab, and what led you to focusing on very niche area?
So, Chetan, it actually, when we started, was a more lifestyle disorder and the preventive, heart health program. And almost 1.5 years back, there was someone who approached me via LinkedIn that my father have undergone two heart surgeries in a span of 2 years. Can you help? And then I said, okay, mine is preventive. What is this about? And then um, I researched and I found that there is something called cardiac rehab and heart rehab which exist, and it's medically recognized. It's very, very important and impactful, and somehow it is, not there. And then I was lucky enough to find an expert, a cardiopulmonary rehab specialist, and we put together a program to be delivered. So now, what is a rehab? Rehab simply means that any person who has undergone a heart attack or a heart surgery, it could be stent, it could be bypass, they need to have a recovery program. That recovery program should have broadly three dimensions. One is safe and targeted exercise. Second, nutrition, and other is the psychological counseling, because person has undergone a shock event. How do you recover? These are three pillars, I would say, a cardiac rehab sits on. And statistically, in the research all across the world shows that any person who undergoes a rehab versus who doesn't go under a rehab, the difference is approximately 40%. Means that person who undergoes a rehab has a 40% less chance of getting another event in a span of 3 to 5 years, or undergoing another surgery within span of 3 to 5 years. It is a significant number, or statistically, proven that how important is rehab. And that's why we put together a program where all these three dimensions I spoke about: the mental well-being, the yoga, through yoga therapy, we focus on that. Safe exercise, which a trained professional, not a regular exercise person, delivers those sessions. And then there is a nutritionist who specializes in, heart nutrition, that aspect. So that's what happens in a rehab. Unfortunately, in our country, there are only 20-25 rehab centers uh, all over India. According to a survey which was done by an international association. And as I told you, that India is the biggest population of heart patient, and every day, there's so many surgeries happening, and these are people are not getting any opportunity or access to this. So that's where I feel that rehab has a very important role to not only save lives but also restore the quality of life for people. So that's what is a goal of a rehab, and I hope that we are able to make some dent in this gap which exists. When we talk about health span, I think I want to also share that how the next 50 years will, this is a transitional point. This is a pivotal point in a healthcare ecosystem, where till this date, and almost all the developed countries, even developing countries, have achieved what we call as a a lifespan. Like in case of India, still we lag behind, but still it is good enough now. 67, 70s, 69 is our India's life expectancy, which was in 50s, when we got our independence. So we have achieved a lot in terms of medical advances, vaccination, medicine, hospital infrastructure, that we can live longer, maybe, with support of the medical care system. But I think what shift needs is happening now globally, is that this shift has to move from lifespan to health span. now you've started to hear about longevity, started to hear about health span, strength span. A lot of these terms have started to come in the narrative. And the most important thing is that, if I talk about a curve, the earlier curve was how you can live longer. But now that curve is shifting towards how well you can live till, how less sick years or how less disease years you can spend as portion of your life. And good part is some countries like Norway, Finland, and few other countries, they have started to measure the health for their economy, also their country and people, is through what they call as health expectancy. What is the portion of the life expectancy they spend not in hospitals, or they are independent, or not in any form of disability. So shorter the span or gap between the two is where the target is. And I think now that needs to shift in our country as well, that we think about, we will live, decently longer, but how well we can live is where I think we should start thinking that how our last 10 years will look like. And that's where we are trying to make a difference, that what you learn through us, or it helps you in, that phase of your life for sure.
Yeah, Ankur, I was hearing some stats that so it's not only what the health expectancy is also linked to the money also. So I
Yeah,
think I was reading it somewhere that a typical person, this was more a US stat, he spent more in last few months in hospital than compared to the whole life he spent on the Medicare, right? So
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah,
clearly the difference between the life expectancy, which is how long we live,
yeah.
compared to health expectancy, how well we live, the
Yes.
long we live, right? Uh, Everything what Pivot Health is providing today could be the cardio rehab or the preventive. Are these covered by the medical insurance today?
So Chetan, unfortunately, when I talk about cardiac rehab, in Western, or international, setup, that is covered under insurance. The cardiac rehab sessions are covered, or at least a majority is covered there. But in India, it is not. That is where we are reaching out to insurance company, but it will take at a policy level to enforce that. Second is, in terms of the preventive and the wellness program. Now, few insurance companies have started to give incentive that, they'll give you a credit like 10,000 you can spend on wellness and other thing. So there is some dimension which exists in that space. And we are now trying to reach out to some of these insurance companies, and some of the new age insurance companies are offering incentives, because it is a win-win for them as well, that healthier their clients live, that means less claim, and that means benefit for them. So and few country and I think that model is being experimented in India, but at a smaller scale, that healthier person is more incentivized. So incentives could be in terms of reduced premiums, or maybe upgrades in terms of the value which is the amount which is covered. So that's a very small scale, but few insurance companies have started to experiment. So I feel that, as I spoke about medicine 3.0, or the new phase of healthcare, more and more people start to realize that it's not only makes a good health sense, but also sense for business to keep people healthy. Healthier people will travel more, healthier people will spend more, beyond medication as well, and they'll be and they will be more economically productive also for a long period of time. So I think, I feel that will it's the way forward for sure.
Yeah, I can surely see a new system evolving, and changing a system is not an easy task. Take time
Yes.
incrementally.
Yes.
So, Ankur, I've got two more questions. So, next one is about we started with oversight on health, versus oversight on business. So, anything else you would like to share with the audience about oversight on health, which we have not covered so far?
Yeah, sure. So, Chetan, what happens is when it comes to business, we are tracking our numbers sometimes on daily basis, depending upon the type of business, what sales are happening, what is my supply, what is my stock situation, the inventory. So, everything which and some of the public listed company, they're also tracking how the, stock was being traded and other things. So there is so much of tracking systems are there, but when it comes to apply the same mindset for the health, it doesn't exist. So, as we spoke earlier about, are you getting yourself properly screened and tested? Then, like in business, we act if there's something is failing, and we try and leverage something we are good about. We don't apply the same thing when it comes to our health. If we are failing in particular dimension, other thing, are we finding solution to solve that or not? So I think it's if we start to see step back and see both these different worlds which we actually differentiate, but the first principles remain the same. You identify the pattern, you track them, you act on them. It's like a feedback loop, and then if something needs work, you work on it and review. So it's the same system. If if people see with a right eye, I would say that's where I feel that both worlds, business and health, they're the same first principles.
I think what also come to my mind is in business we talk about leading and lagging indicator. So, and
Yes,
similarly, I
yes,
think we need to be more aware about in the health also. I think we all see some patterns, right? Maybe getting more tired or
yes, yes, yes.
breathlessness or headache, right? But we kind of ignore them.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
these could be the
yeah.
leading indicator which could be pointing towards a health condition. So I think we need to
Yes.
watch out both for leading and lagging.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the wisdom has said in the prevention is better than cure. We dismiss that as a very everyone knows about this thing, but they don't realize the importance unless something happens. And when it especially when it comes to a heart situation, it's a fatal event. Why would you put yourself risk for a fatal event which can be greatly controlled, to identify. And but I think that's where the mindset needs to shift of
Yeah.
differentiating what is living life as a more holistic dimension.
So my last question now, Ankur. Uh, you have taken a journey from multiple industry, banking, international trade, healthcare. What message would you give to any professional who is today taking that transition or looking forward to take that transition? Any suggestion which you wish someone would have given to you?
The first thing is, I would say that even if you're working, right now you're doing a job in anywhere, start to shift your mindset more from an employee to a business owner kind of a mindset. I'm talking in the mindset because that's where your training will start in a way, mental training to be able to achieve that. So that is one. If I have to go back, I would, because I had a what should I say, goal to transition to entrepreneurship. But I didn't realize that even those 1 or 2 years of transition before, fully moving, if I would have worked with that mindset or at least started training myself, that is one, suggestion I have. Second, learn and learn. So you learn not only about the technical aspects of it, learn a most important skill. If I have to say one skill, one needs to definitely invest is in sales and marketing, because that's where the fuel of any business is. You may have a great product, you may have great technology, you may have a great team, but if you're not able to sell and market your product or a service, then everything, nothing works in terms of it's great product not sold is not great. So that's the second, I would say, advice which I learned a little late, and now I invest a lot of my time in learning this as a craft, and it's a learnable skill, just like any. It's in fact it's easier skill to learn than the technology, but just like any skill, you need to put a dedicated effort, hire a specialist, coach, or courses. So many things exist, and make a difference. And third is find a right group of mentors, because a mentor may be a leadership coach. A mentor could be a existing entrepreneur. A mentor could be anyone. So having that mentor where you who can see things in a more detached manner, that's what I would say that is important. So these are the three things, and just remember that everyone has its own way. Just don't think that that person or whom you, maybe industry leader or someone, Steve Jobs had his own way, Bill Gates had his own way, so Jeff Bezos has his own way. But when we look in India, the Kamath brothers had their own way of building a business. And so it's just that, have your own process, trust the process, and keep refining it. So this would be my wisdom of these, making these transitions, and also running the second venture. And I'm still learning, so as I said, that always remains.
I can completely resonate with that, Ankur. The first one is, again, I kind of compare it with being reactive and proactive.
Yes.
And, I think we both were in that stage maybe a decade back when we were also in reactive. But
Yes.
today, with the learning, with beating, with experience, we are getting shifting towards a proactive stage,
Yes.
right? What you were
Yes.
talking about the healthcare also. And secondly, sales, marketing, that is so true. I work with so many founders, and 95% of us don't realize how important sales and marketing is.
Yeah.
Totally resonate. And the third, what you mentioned about mentor coach, true, very true. We build the systems, and sometimes because we become the part of those systems, we don't challenge them.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
you need someone, as you said rightly, someone with an external view, objective view, who can say that, okay, your system is not working because of one, two, three things. And then, so totally
Yeah.
resonate. Thank you, Ankur. I have so much more to ask you, but probably we'll get back again in 6 months. And for the second round, thank you so much for spending time and for these insights.
Thank you, Chetan, for giving me an opportunity to share, what I could, be of value to your listeners and viewers. And I think, there's so much of, things to learn, and getting the right information and perspective is what I tried my best to give with my own experience. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode all the way through. The Impossible Transition podcast exists to bring you real stories of leadership transition and the systems that help leaders scale their organizations. Each episode, one system, one story, one shift. Tell us, what system do you want insights on next? Drop it in the comments. We would love to build the next episode around it. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, and also share with a leader who need to hear it. Until next time, keep making impossible transition.